So it's 7 o'clock.
So let's not have a crazy long podcast this time. Let's do like 45 minutes.
Okay.
So
We'll try.
Or 30. I mean,
Let's go. Okay, so
you okay?
yeah.
me
Here's the
take-
thing. The flat earth. Not if the flat earth is real versus not. Cuz math and everything else let's say, how can I say it? Like any scientific experiments will tell us it's a sphere. Look outside in the sun and the moon, everything's a sphere. The idea of the earth as being flat is so absurd. So that's why I kind of want to talk about why, what does it take to convince a person the earth is flat? And not only that, they believe it so much, they argue with you like it's like the end of their life kind of argument. They believe it's so strong. What makes a person believe so strong that something is so incorrect?
So I think we have to first start with the person's nature to want to believe in the deception. So because come on, like, I'm not saying I'm sure you've seen this TikTok. I'm not saying every conspiracy theory is true, but you're telling me the government's shooting us 100% straight as an arrow? Never lied to us ever once?
Okay, so conspiracy theory. That term, did you know that term was developed by the CIA after I think JFK assassination?
I think its concept, though, maybe the term itself was created then, but the concept of, paranoia, something going on behind your back, some force bigger than you working against you. You've heard of the Bible, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when David sends the guy off to war so he could sleep with his wife, conspiracy theory, right? It is a concept that's ancient in time. Might be, but I can see what you're saying
So here's the thing. Let's say the CIA developed the idea of the flat earth theory, right? And the reason to do that is to get something so ridiculous and figure out how to make somebody that's reasonable, rational, to believe such an idea. Mm-hmm. Once you know that pattern, you can make people believe whatever you want because you understand the pattern or the path or the programming that it takes to make somebody reasonable believe in something so absurd as the flat earth theory.
And here's one of the key concepts off the top, right? It's an old concept that says if you take somebody who's really good and you expose them to crime or criminal behavior, at first they will reject it. Then at some point, if they're exposed to it long enough, they will accept it as okay. And if then exposed to a degree long enough after that, they will actually embrace it and become it. So this is another key concept in stores. This is why you have to go to the back of a Costco to buy a chicken. The longer you stay in a store, scientifically proven, they know this without a doubt, the longer a customer is in the store, the more money they spend. They don't. Okay. So the first thing you have to do to get somebody believing in flat earth theory, any of these theories, is exposure over and over and over. So have you heard the arguments?
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. These arguments some of them are so absurd. But when you see the person articulate the argument, the belief in their eyes is so certain.
But some of the arguments aren't absurd. So one, and maybe you could help me put this one to rest, is curvature. When they, if you put a camera at this end of the table and focus on an object over there,
okay.
If the lens is right at the level of the table,
okay,
you should be able to see that side. Okay. So now if this table is bowed ever so slightly and you put the camera flat compared to this end, it'll have a slight angle and it won't be able to see the object on the other side of the curvature. So there's a lot of people that are saying, okay, well, and again, this is what they, like, so if the Earth is this 24,000 mile sphere, the rate of drop off, if you stand at this point, if you go like 6 miles out, the Earth should be this much farther
like
down.
200 feet down.
Right.
Yeah, or whatever. Or
So
more than that.
So if you get down to the ground level, there's like this idea that you should only be able to see an object so far away. And they've tons of guys that are like, but this object's like 6 miles past that. This object's like 10 miles past that.
So I've seen so many of those experiments. Mm-hmm. A lot of them, they're just not done correctly, as in they're at a different level than they think. That is like the number one problem with those objects. Another one, they just have the wrong information with whatever they're doing. It's like I heard one about ships and laser communication. This is the best one I've like known that could be debunked. This guy's all, I worked at the Navy, or I worked with the Navy, something with the Navy. Anyways, and the Navy used a laser ship-to-ship communication. And after a certain time, you don't see the ships. He's also, how did it work? There was a thing he just didn't understand how it worked, period. Like radio signals or anything like that. He just had, basically, he knew they were using radio lasers. There's a curvature that's involved, but he didn't understand. So he had like two correct pieces of information and one piece of information that was not correct. Mm-hmm. So I think that's how these theories keep getting pushed. You have like two pieces of information that's correct and one piece is not correct. And they're, it's like a circle of correct. When one's not correct, it can't be correct until all three of those pieces are correct. So I think that's how a lot of this stuff gets misunderstood.
Right, and then propagated further.
Yeah. Well, there's a really good YouTuber, Sci-Fi Dan. Okay. He's pretty, well, like I looked at his views. He has a lot about just science, right? And I think it's Sci-Dan maybe. Anyways, not Sci-Fi Dan. I'll look it up later. But his thing was... like he started being real popular. You could see all his views on YouTube like don't have much, but then you see the debunking flat Earth, like tons of views. And his is really good because he like breaks them all, like he debunks all of them. And he does a really, really good job. And it's just fascinating to watch him, just to see how easy most of this stuff is getting debunked.
Well, this to me fits right in because I personally don't really know if we've been to the moon or not either.
That was my next jump off. Yeah.
So, and one of my favorite people is like Neil deGrasse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, thank you. And he is so good.
Yes, I love that guy. Oh,
right.
Yeah.
He is so good, and just has really straight, verifiable stuff. And the stuff that he's like you can't verify is amazing because he's like, but does it really even matter? It's like so. But you keep getting these people that say things like, so you're telling me the lunar rover came down in this object, and they take a picture of the lunar rover and then they show a picture of the vessel that carried it.
And it doesn't compute.
Right. And so I think they're able, I would say, to me, those little things like that are the things that people use to crack the door open. And then when you have somebody who is already suspicious or less trusting for whatever reason, they want to do it. And then something that you got to take into consideration is the joy that a human being gets from that aha moment. So even if you're wrong, if for some reason you believe that you have you ever seen like a magician do something and then you're like, I saw how he did it. And you're just like,
well, a lot of it, I know exactly the like aha moment, but a lot of it is disappointment. It's like, oh, that's how it works.
Okay, but what I'm saying, even though you're right about that, is when people who are wanting to believe that they were already deceived or they already have a bunch of doubt about what they currently been shown, and then somebody is willing to give them a good argument and present them with an alternative, if that person who's making that argument can create that emotional response in a person that, like, now I know the truth. And, people, I mean, think about this. Not just that aha moment, but imagine how hard it would be to walk outside if you weren't totally sure that when you open the door and cross the threshold, if gravity was going to somehow flip around and you were just going to get sucked into outer space. Meaning you would go through your life very stressed out. And the belief that you carry that when you walk across the threshold, you're going to continue on your path like normal and gravity will stay the same, for lack of a better term, is very grounding. People like that security of knowing that something, just knowing it. And knowing and believing are almost the exact same thing, right or wrong. Factually right or wrong.
Yeah, the whole knowing, the whole idea of knowing.
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's true or not.
Exactly.
You know.
Right.
And that makes you feel nice and secure and grounded.
And we crave that.
Okay. No. Well, I mean, okay. So Neil deGrasse Tyson, he said he is talking about somebody about exactly that, the the moon landing, and somebody said he's like, well, here's, or maybe it was the flat Earth, something. He was having a discussion with somebody, and he was saying that, okay, here's pictures from NASA, and this is how it looks, this angle and stuff. And then the guy says, well, NASA could have just faked those in CGI. And then at that point, he says, well, I can't have a reasonable argument if you think everything is a conspiracy and you don't want to believe in anything.
Right.
So at some point you have to say, are you just not being reasonable? Is the flat Earth theory bringing out all the people that are not reasonable and that are just loony? I mean, I've seen a lot of people that seem really reasonable, and I don't know, they just want to believe.
But something that is true is that for a long time, historically speaking, we have been given things as fact that we're not. So remember, at one point, everybody thought the world was flat.
Well, sure. And today's time, it's probably best or the worst or the best time for things that we thought were true. We discover they're not true. And then makes that doubt. What else is not true?
But right. And, and so there's a lot of things as we look around, it's like they've been debunked. And yet, there's a great comedian. He's talks about God versus the Big Bang.
Okay.
And he's like, okay, so my version of creation is God, something you can't measure, see, right, created everything. And your version is nothing created everything. Yeah. Something you can't, And he goes, and then people like Big Bang, you die, you go back to nothing. So you merge with your creator, right? It's like...
Well, then at that point, it's the understanding or the definition of God is a misunderstanding between those two people.
But I'm just saying, so you take something like the Big Bang.
Sure.
That they're really pushing right along with a solar system, like the whole view of the cosmology, right? The Big Bang and the fact that the Earth is round is all part of one contingent event, right?
Okay.
Now, I actually happen to believe the Earth is round mostly because of bubbles, soap bubbles.
Well, no, I was going to say the reason, to believe the Earth is round because that's how gravity works. It's a mass, and
right.
The more mass collects it collects in a circle. There's no.
That's what I mean, a soap bubble. So when you...
I mean, that's kind of like a universal shape almost, you could say. That's physics. That's a universal law.
It is physics. Why don't we get square bubbles? Why don't we get flat bubbles?
I mean, that's a perfect example. I love it.
But the answer is and this one I actually know. The answer is because the sphere is the most energy efficient shape, period. It contains the most mass for the least amount of surface area.
Interesting.
So that's just a scientific fact. Like, it's the absolute most amount of mass that you can pack into a space and have the smallest surface area. Every other shape, if you distort it in any way,
Takes energy.
you lose
Yeah.
you lose mass and increase surface area. So that's why sphere. But going back to this whole like Big Bang theory, have you seen the James Webb Space Telescope?
Sure. Yeah. I've been following it for
Okay.
years.
So there's the new thing that I caught last week, kind of poking holes in the Big Bang theory because they're finding galaxies fully formed that are in time way too close to when the Big Bang supposedly happened.
Yep.
So either the Big Bang either the Big Bang happened much farther in time than we know, or it's wrong or something.
Well, then you heard the theory about how universes contract, contract and like explode, contract and explode, contract and explode. So what if there's multiple universes that within visual range of the telescope, the James Webb Telescope? What if our universe was contracted and expanded, and then that other universe has the different contract and expansion? So, example, the black hole. Like black hole is the gravity is so powerful that it sucks in light. What if at some point it just gets more powerful, more energy, and then it just explodes? Maybe that's what our universe versus that other universe that just James Webb's found is a different contraction expansion cycle.
Right. And I actually, in my own just reasoning of the universe, have always thought that it might very well be that on the other side of a black hole is the white hole that's spewing all the, but we can't see it because.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I know, but now thinking about it, that doesn't make like mathematical sense.
Oh, I get what you're saying. Right?
But we don't know. We don't know. That's
Right.
the thing. It could be. Who
And
knows?
it could be. I get what you're saying. All the mass gets condensed until a lot like a diesel engine. A diesel engine
Exactly.
just compresses the fuel until it can't, and then it heats up, and the energy gets released, and boom.
That's the thing, because there's so many things we still don't know about the universe, right? We're always discovering things. Like they just got the James Webb up in the last few years, and we've been poking all these holes in all these ideas that we
Right.
thought about the universe. Like you said, they're starting poking holes about the Big Bang Theory. It's either wrong timing, or it works differently, or like I said, it's multiple universes contracting, expanding. So like maybe this black hole that gets condensed so much and then it explodes again, there's a certain limit of energy that's a universal law that we're just not aware of yet.
Right. It might also depend on what it's made out of. It could just be the same. You can compress air a lot further than you can compress
Water.
water. I was going to say diesel.
Diesel, okay.
But liquid, before something changes. And so, maybe a big black hole has a whole bunch of iron, and maybe a small black hole has a whole bunch of hydrogen. I don't know either.
Just mass.
Right.
I mean, it's all, at the end of the day, it's mass. But so the black hole, for example, I forgot. I had a thing I was going to say. I need to write it down as you're talking, making notes.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot.
So, on the topic of flat Earth, I was going to ask you, have you heard of hollow Earth theory?
Yeah, again, it doesn't make sense.
Well, some argue that it does. One of the biggest arguments for the hollow Earth theory is they take what we present as the gravitational force of what our Earth is, and they say that just doesn't make any sense. If the Earth was really this massive, right, that it would have a much more immensely powerful gravitational field. meaning if the Earth was just solid all the way through,
Oh,
that we'd weigh like 600 pounds. So their argument is not only is the Earth hollow, but if you were to like walk onto the inside of the basketball, right, that the crust is still so thick that the gravitational force still works. You'll still be attracted to the floor that you're walking on.
I mean, I guess because at some point you look at your bubble idea. The bubble is still hollow. I mean, it's still a circle. It's a hollow bubble. I mean, that kind of makes sense if you look at it that way. That's an interesting idea.
The only problem is if you had like a soap bubble and you poked a hole in it,
Boop.
well, let's say it didn't recede like us,
Yeah.
but it would want to close because
Yep.
you have created more surface area and less mass.
That's why I'm more on the theory of the moon's hollow. Moon's an alien base. Not only that, why is the moon always facing us? Is there any other discoverable moons that always face the surface of?
Is there anything?
Yeah, is there anything? Not just the moon. Anything that's always facing its planet.
Right. Or whatever it orbits.
Yes.
Right. I have no idea. It does seem kind of odd.
I mean, it spins in a circle, but as the circle spins, it goes around the Earth, right? And it's always facing the Earth.
It's so precise, it never moves.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
And I like the idea. Some people say, based on the composition of the rocks that are on the moon that Neil Armstrong brought back or whatever, that it's likely that the moon is actually a part of the Earth.
yes, I heard that a lot.
Okay, and I could see, yeah, a big dirt clod gets kicked up into the sky, kind of rolls out, catches the gravitational field, and then as it tumbles through the world, it rounds up again.
But we would see evidence of this happening with other moons in the solar system, at least in our solar system, observable solar system.
This is something that would take millions of years to really. And here's the truth too. And I do know this. There are plenty of planets in our solar system with moons that their moons are not really round.
Yeah. That's like, I'm guessing that would be a theory of the piece coming off,
Right.
and it didn't round off yet because it hasn't spun long enough. Or
But
lived
our
long
moon
enough.
is so round. It's like it is like
Yeah.
so pristinely
Okay,
round.
now we're getting now. I don't know. Have you heard of the whole Earth prison planet theory?
I can't say that I've heard of this one.
So the
Prison
prison planet. Thank you. Say that 3 times fast. Prison planet idea is that we are feeding our like life energy is feeding a special or a certain alien.
The fourth dimensional reptiles. I've heard of them.
Okay, fine. Reptiles, some certain alien force.
Yeah.
And the moon is the collector. That's why it's always facing us. Yeah.
Okay,
so
well-
the moon is collecting energy.
I didn't get our hats yet.
Yeah, Illuminati. This is the whole Illuminati episode.
Right.
This is what it is. Anyways, so the moon, that's why it's always facing us. It's an actual receptor of energy, and this is a prison planet, which is kind of another theory, but it kind of goes with the whole they're collecting it, and our souls always keep returning to this planet. We cannot escape this planet.
Oh, so we're in purgatory.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are some thoughts I've had too regarding that. Like, you can go anywhere on this planet, but whatever you are inside of your flesh suit, you can't leave it. You can't leave your flesh suit.
Well, sure. Then, I always thought about that. Is this some sort of agreement you made, and with who?
Right.
Is this one of the laws, and who created the laws?
But okay. We don't I look out from myself and I see dogs and cats and birds and all these and trees and all these other things
Sure.
that live and their life force, so I don't subscribe to the prison planet theory as much as I would subscribe to a concept that was actually put forward in the Green Lantern movie where the the two forces in the universe either feed off of good energy or bad energy. And the reason that we get so much propaganda on the news and all this stuff is because they want to feed off of our negative emotions. And there's a whole
And the moon's there to collect it.
and the moon's there to collect, but right, and maybe the sun's there to collect our good stuff. I don't know.
But okay, let's look at that. Maybe there is no good energy or bad energy. There is energy and there's lack of energy or no energy. Just like light or the cold versus heat. It's not like there's just it's colder or hotter. There's just more of it in that area, so it becomes warmer. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Like ultimate darkness, and if there's a light somewhere, it's not ultimate darkness. So is the dark light good and the darkness bad, or just
Or
darkness
well,
is darkness because there is no light? Cold is cold because there is no heat.
then let me say it a different way. Fear and all those negative emotions could be with what a person experiences when their energy is leaving them. And all the good and the love is when they are actually
Fascinating.
okay. So, like you're saying, I get it. Like it's hot and it's cold. It's like, well, it's really just more or less. And it's like, okay, we'll take that, right? So I can feel a little bit happy, and maybe that's cold. And maybe I can feel a lot of it happy, and maybe that's hot. But whenever I start losing energy, there's something naturally negative that we understand about it.
Well, okay, but there's that. Sure, that's an idea, but there's also these emotions and fears and happiness we developed to be who we are, like as in a human species. What if that's just an evolutionary progress? We had to have those things we call fear or happiness to survive the way we
Right.
did.
So we didn't burn
It
our
doesn't
hands
mean
on
it's yeah, exactly. It doesn't mean it's energy coming or leaving.
Okay, but that completely contradicts what you just said a minute ago, which is why isn't getting burned on the stove just energy and getting food just energy? There's something distinguishable about the difference. So one example is when you get hurt, right? It's causing damage.
Well, damage is it's not. It's just changing things. I mean, to us it's damaged, but when you just kind of look out from the outside, it's just changed. It's different.
Right.
Like if you burn your hand, right?
But like what you just said, there had to be something and almost innately built into us because even if you just go well, believe in evolution, all this stuff, you go back to one single cell. If it didn't have some sort of base level concept like this is bad, I don't want to go swimming in the acidic pool. I want to go swim in the alkaline pool, right? You know what I'm trying to say there?
Well, okay, yeah. So let's say those cells. This is bad. This is good. The reason it was bad because those cells that did bad, they didn't continue. The cells that did good, they continued.
But again, you have to leap off of this idea that it started with just one. Right? The whole idea about it's like somehow, and then further down
hold
the road.
on. It could be one. Here's another thing like about technology, and I think we could put it to a lot of things because it's more of a universal idea or concept or theory. Is when something happens here, like let's say a light bulb was developed here, it was also worked on over here and over here by different nations, different countries, different scientists. And if this guy didn't create it, this guy would have created in a year or two, or in 5 years, this guy would have created. So that one cell, it wasn't one cell, it was the atmosphere in the earth let whatever happened happen, and these cells were happening all over the earth.
But same basic concept. I don't think we're going to get away from this.
Okay.
The guy making a light bulb, right? He knows if the light comes on, it's good.
Yeah.
Right? And if it doesn't come on, then it didn't work. No, I'll stop.
Well, but no, hold on. That I see what you're saying, but then you still live and you progress because the light didn't come on bad, light came on good. But as a cell, if it died off, how would the other cell know that's bad? It would only know what's good or just what is.
And that's what I'm trying to say. There is something innately built into the base level of everything. Even a tree is like, if you ever see like where the roots grow, right? It knows to go towards the water,
yeah.
right? It's like there is no water until it's way, literally, I don't know how a tree knows where the water is, but it will find it. And
I know. I dug up my pipes 3 times to
Right.
get the roots out of my pipes.
And so somehow or another, life, living things, and actually I'd argue maybe even inanimate objects that, was an argument maybe made by the Native Americans or other cultures too. There is this innate knowledge of good and bad. Because otherwise the guy would fail making the light bulb and go, "Yay, I won." Right? If he didn't, I mean, he's a highly evolved creature from our perspective of things in the world.
Sure.
And so he knew in advance, most likely that didn't work. But my point is, nobody thinks the broken light bulb is a success. And
I don't know. I would argue that point.
Okay.
Because there had to be so much done for that broken light bulb to be even there.
have you seen the story of the blue LEDs?
No, but I know a little bit about it. How blue LEDs were either hard to make or you can't make. I forget. There's something to it. I know there's something to it, but I don't know exactly what it is.
That guy was amazing. You should watch that story sometime.
So back to let's see. Oh, so Prison Planet, Spirits, Energy. So there's a book. I would recommend it. It's called Journey of Souls. It's a book that talks about the kind of the concept of it, and I'll get into, remind me if I forget, the idea of knowing something, if it's true or not, like the flat earth theory, right? Kind of where we started. So the book, the guy that writes it, the author, he does hypnosis to help people, quit smoking, past relationship, trauma, whatever. And then as he goes through his therapy training and starts training or starts doing therapy on people, they start talking about things that have nothing to do with their lives, like another life. And as he goes through it, he's discovering he's tapped into other people's lives over and over and over again. So after so many hundreds of people, he starts writing a book, right? And he describes what a soul is, how it comes in, how we don't remember our past lives. That's I thought about that a lot. Because imagine if you could remember your past lives. You would die, you go back to another body, and you'd be mad about that other death or something happened. You're like, I get him back. So that was kind of like the big thing, is like the reason we don't remember our past lives is because it would interfere with our current life.
Right.
And there's plenty, that's the thing, there's plenty of evidence out there of kids remembering their past lives.
Well, and you have like a popular book that I enjoyed when I was younger, which is The Celestine Prophecy, talks about similar concepts and like soul groups where you have a certain group of people and it's like one person will come down to earth, be a soldier. He's trying to fulfill his life's mission. Of course, he doesn't succeed. He dies. He goes back up and he meets back up with his soul group. They kind of converse for a little while, and then it's the next person's turn until eventually, for whatever reason, It just doesn't explain it like it's in a chronological order. It's just like, but when it's the right time for that person to go back, they do, and they do with kind of the guidance of their little group.
That is very like it has a lot of concepts that this
Right.
Journey of Souls talks about. So, also like about life energy, we kind of mentioned life energy. So, and souls, life energy, aka souls, or whatever you want to look at it. There was I think of this book or maybe somewhere else. I kind of learned about this, where let's say evolution, right? Evolution. The reason we evolve into beings we are is because we're not just randomly evolving, we're evolving closer to what the soul is. So our evolution path is guided by the souls.
Okay.
So over time, like as our souls gain intelligence, you have a wiser, older soul. Every time it comes back, the human body evolved, or maybe this is the soul, how it looks, and we evolve closer to match the soul than anything else.
Well, and there's a lot of religions that deal with concepts like this. Even the Mormons, they believe that we're on a path to becoming a god, basically. I know there's other people. I don't know if you've heard of Edgar Casey. If you haven't, you should read into his stuff because he was like the sleeping prophet. This is one of the most go ahead, look him up. This is one of the most well documented sort of things ever. So somebody from a long ways away would say, okay, my son Tommy's sick. And he would go into a trance and he would diagnose the person accurately, and it would work. And Edgar Casey talked about something called the Akashic Records, which is sort of like a great big book of everything that's ever happened.
So there was another book I think finished, or maybe it was just a clip of a book. No, it was a lady talking about how she died. That's right, how she died, and she came to the library of everything. Like she said, in this library, they had books for everything, and when it happened, how it happened. It was the history of the world or the universe or whatever you want to call it.
That sounds a lot like
time.
That sounds a lot like Edgar Casey's
Okay,
version.
so since we kind of covered that, here's an idea of I don't know if maybe it's a well-known idea, but it just kind of came to me. To know something is true, when you have a bit of information, you could take that as truth, right? You got one point of information, but there could be many points of information that's wrong until you start looking for it, and then you say, "Oh, this is wrong. Okay, so this is probably not true." But imagine, like about the multiple lives, souls. You learn this piece of information from here, then you learn it from here. You learn it from here, 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 here. You have all these sources telling you to a certain point. So then there has to be a lot of truth to that. So, flat Earth theory, there's, I guess, again, a lot of truth. Yes, it's a circle, but it's not a flat circle. I mean, you could you get one piece of truth and it's a circle. Okay, it's a circle, so it must be flat. Well, you turn it this way, and now it's flat. No, it's not. It's not.
So you're saying that people get fooled into flat Earth by having enough seemingly verified pieces of
Exactly.
information that hasn't been poked a hole in.
Exactly. And not only that, they don't want to believe the holes that are poked into it. They're like, there's a one where there's two experiment. One where there's a guy, they put two pieces of cardboard or wood, and then the light transmits, and then they move to a certain distance, and the light disappears, and he goes, huh. He just disproved the theory of flat Earth to himself. I don't know what happened after that because that clip is used all the time going, that's been heard all over the globe, right? And there's another one that was just recent. It was done with helicopters across a big flat area of water. And the helicopter went down, and they couldn't see it anymore. And they're like, "Are you sure you're at that elevation?" They're like, "Yeah, we're at that elevation." Then they went up where they're supposed to see him. They saw him, and they're like, "Oh."
Well, and they're, on the topic of it, it's interesting because I think of that experiment. I don't know if you've ever seen it where you put your arm behind like a
Yes,
curtain.
I've seen that. It's
And they
what's it called? There's lots of people studied phantom arms. No, like
well, right. It's like this. So they drag a feather or some object,
yeah.
and they drag it
The
across.
famous one is the hammer. That was like a
Right,
gag.
and everybody jerks their hand
Yep.
back, even though they're hitting, and they know it. They know it. It's not like they're being fooled. It's like they put the fake arm there.
They know it's fake, yeah,
Right.
and it still works.
Right, because they've been feeling. And so I think, kind of going back to what you said, there is something evolutionary or whatever in us that, for lack of a better term, we do actually want to err on the side of caution. We want to believe, or whether we want to believe or not, we believe not because it makes a lot of sense. We believe because maybe.
Maybe.
And
That's a good
and
one.
I would rather pull my hand back
Just in case.
just in case
Yeah.
and not get hit by the hammer, because I know for a fact that if I get hit by that hammer, it is going to suck.
It goes back to that cell, which pool of liquid
Right.
it's going to. It sees all these cells go there. They never return. It goes, sees its cells, these go there. They kind of return. So just in the maybe, I'm going to go to the one where they kind of return instead of trying to figure out what's going on over
Right.
there where they're not returned. Just maybe.
And that has a lot to do with, have you seen that experiment where they have one guy go in and they have all these lines on a graph, and there's like 6 other people or a number of other people. And so they go, which line is bigger? And it's like, well, obviously, right? But everybody says any other line other than the one that's obviously the biggest. So one time the guy goes in and he's like, you guys are stupid. 5 times, you guys are dumb. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier.
Oh, yes.
And so finally,
you got convinced.
Right. It's not even about convinced. It's more important for humans to fit in. And this goes back to,
I was going to say that's more of a group,
Right.
like groupthink almost.
and that's how, these people, these flat earthers, any of these people, this is going to stem into those other topics we were thinking about, but religions, political parties and views, any type of thing. And it was really important. I mean, for a long time, if, I really saw a great argument. I think it was Neil deGrasse again, or say his name properly.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
He goes,
It is better to fit in than to be right.
But
that's right. That was him.
Right, but up to like 200 years ago, racism wasn't racism. It was our body's biological defense, because if there was a whole bunch of people that looked very different from you all of a sudden, right, that was bad. You had to get your bows, your spears, whatever, because they weren't there to be friends, right? And it was always that way. It's always been that way.
I've never heard him say that, but that's fantastic.
Could be a different person.
Oh, I see. Because because I seen a lot of his like very like famous clips.
But it's a lot like our theory on dieting, right? It's like, evolutionarily speaking, we don't need to feel starving, and when we go to the mall, we don't need to feel threatened just because people don't look like us. But it's built in.
Well, yeah. No, that's the thing. Like, so when people are, how can I say, like, we're naturally racist, I guess you could say that.
Oh, we're gonna get some hate crime. We're gonna
or discriminative. I don't know. Maybe that's not the
No,
wrong term.
It really is. I think it's because discriminating is just kind of like, no, I'd rather have a burger than a pizza.
But like you said, if a bunch of people look different from you, you're gonna be on alert,
right.
So what do you call that? Is that racism by like genetic racism.
No, I think what it is, it's a lot like many of the things that are kind of being conditioned into our society, right? Like a long, long time ago, maybe the species wouldn't have survived if a guy didn't just do what he needed to do to spread his genes.
But is it okay? Is it conditioning of society? That's a good term.
I think it's conditioning now.
Or okay, what if you get a bunch of different race kids? Let's say I don't know, and you never taught them about racism or anything. Like 5-year-olds, you put them on an island. Let's say you like 100 white kids and let's say 100 like Asians and then 100 black kids, and you put them like mix them up and then let them just kind of live their own thing. Do you think they will all separate into their own little groups? Would that be a natural evolution kind of survival tactic?
I think where we're at right now, it may not necessarily be all on looks. If everybody looks different from everybody else, I think if you say we're to drop, like 10 white kids and 10 black kids, that the oil and
Will they mingle?
well, but they might separate. But if you say you just drop a whole mixed group of people down there, I think what you'll end up seeing is separation. It'll just be different. It'll be like, the fishing's better on this side of the island. No, it's not. The hunting's better on this side of the island. They'll go off in different camps.
It'll be a different type of separation. So, because I know kids are not, I haven't really seen racist kids, right? Like, it's really adults because kids usually, there was even like experiment done where they even asked them like, what kind of kid is that? Or it was a trick question. And it was like, oh, it's a girl, it's a boy, which was a different race. And the kids did not answer by race. They just answered by girl or boy.
No. And I agree to a large extent that like hate is taught. I think just based on what I know, when you're young and you're curious, because you see mom touching the stove, why can't I touch the stove?
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. That it gets kind of taught into us what we should and shouldn't do, or what is acceptable or isn't. And I think a lot of the problems that we're having with racism, which we're not really supposed to dive into this.
Well, not this time. Yeah.
But I think a lot of the problem is there's too much residual. Like, for example, maybe I was around my great grandfather, and maybe he, because I'm old enough. So he's back there with all that nastiness, and I was with him just long enough that I picked some up, maybe not all of it. And then I see in my lifetime my great grandchild, and we're like 8 generations apart now, and there's still like this little bit of residual from all the way back in my great grandfather that I'm passing on to my great grandchild. So I think a lot of this stuff gets.
Hold on. So we're talking about human psychology more than anything, right? That's what this whole topic, this whole discussion is about. That's why I started with flat Earth, because it's not about the flat Earth versus the global Earth. It's about human psychology and why people believe certain things so strongly. So when we're talking about that, or racism, I guess specifically is no, not racism. No, I'm sorry. Human psychology. There is experience. For example, I can teach my kids how to cut an apple, a potato, cucumber, right? I showed them how to hold the knife. I showed them how to be careful, how to open boxes with the knife, how to always keep it away from you, point it towards away, never point point towards you, never try to open something towards your hand. I taught them that. I showed them, but they still cut themselves until they get that experience.
Right.
So there's a huge portion of experience.
So on that note too, right? I was, for the viewers listening at home, I was homeschooled. I did not get cultured with lots of things. And I would tell you this, that most of I'll use stereotypes. that I heard about growing up, I was like, come on. It can't be that has to just be almost like a myth for like lots of these stereotypes. And I'm not going to go into every one. However, I grew up. I went out into the world. I went out into the world with the belief that these stereotypes were like stupid. And time and again, groups of people reinforced that those stereotypes actually came out of, like, there's a reason for it. Like,
well, I mean, stereotypes are there not just because they're created out of thin air.
right. But I'm
There's
saying
something to it. It could be stupid, but there was something to it.
right. So,
I mean, Asians are good at math. The majority of Asians fantastic at math, and we could get on the topic like Chinese. Why specifically Chinese are really good at math? I can tell you about it. Has to do with language and culture, but that's another story. They get taught math like very, very young.
actually, and that's a good thing, because I think I brought this up in one of our last videos about how to multiply your baby's intelligence. One of the things they teach in that.
Maybe we were talking about math. Yeah.
Well, one of the things because I do remember because it was when I told you about the guy says like there's physical intelligence too, like how you move your body through space, like gymnastics, but it's not.
That's right. You did talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
So right. So the guy basically, he wants children before the age of 5 to gain a certain level of skill sets that's very hard to learn after 5. And one of them on the mathematics, right?
Yes.
But specifically, it's a very interesting thing. So like you look at an A, and you know it's an A. Even if I write it in weird different ways and all the different
Upside
fonts,
down, sideways,
right,
backwards. Yeah.
right. So what's interesting is how come you can't identify? There's 26 letters in the alphabet, right? If I take a pocket full of coins out of my pocket, or a handful of coins out of my pocket, a random number between 1 and 26, and I just set them down on the counter, you look at it, and I take them away. How come
closer to 25?
how come you don't know what number that is?
Well, there's a lot. I don't have time to count.
But that's exactly, you don't trace an A, you recognize it.
Well, I'm going to recognize if you have a bunch of coins, it's closer to 25, 26 versus 1.
Where you may have a gauge of, is it more than 1 or less than 26, right? But my point is, if I took out a letter and I had 26 letters and I just took them out and I laid a letter down, you'd know it immediately. You'd barely even need to see it. I could just like do that and you'd know.
Okay.
So I take out a handful of coins, right? And I just go, bink. How come you don't know the quantity the same way you know a letter?
Well, I don't have enough time.
Well, that's where this guy comes in.
Because I guessed how many. I was the closest. There was a family event, and there was a
Right.
jar of jelly beans, and I sort of, or I was the closest to telling how many jelly beans, so I won whatever the prize we had. The way I did that is I got the jelly bean ingredients, not ingredients, but the how many calories it has and per how much weight. And I basically I forgot. I like weighted the thing. I did math. I did the calculations, and I got a really good number.
So like I could decipher Chinese if I got a deciphering book and I did all the calculations. Right? So this guy, okay, his whole idea is when babies are young, you hit them with these flashcards and you say put 9 dots on a flashcard, and you go, and this is 9. And then the next time you show the kid 9 dots on the flashcard, they can't even be in the same order.
Yeah.
Right? It can't be a pattern that they recognize.
You just trained their brain to recognize so quickly.
To recognize.
Wow.
Right.
That's fantastic.
And so there are skill sets that this guy wants to teach, does teach. And he came through all this by helping brain injured children and adults. But anyways, we won't go too far into it. But the whole idea, see, even when I was saying it, you were kind of missing the concept. So he trains babies up to 100. So you just, if I had like 85 toothpicks and I just dropped them
Oh,
on
heck
the
no. Yeah.
right,
No
and
way.
then I just picked them up, theoretically, people will recognize that the same as you recognize the word science. You just read it.
Okay, hold on. There's this whole concept of you have enough people in a big enough pool, and there, let's say you do drop 50 toothpicks, and you say it's anywhere from 20 to 80, and a big enough pool of people the guess will get closer and closer to the real number. You ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard lots of things like that. That's
That's a whole different level of human psychology. Like
it'll get closer and closer, but it doesn't necessarily indicate that it'll actually hit the number.
So what if like we do a trading program like stock trading, and we get a pool of 1,000 people, and we could like narrow it down where it's gonna hit.
You know, that's a really good idea. I think that's actually what the stock market is. Okay.
Yeah, but we have to tap in the secret.
But I think the problem with the stock market is not that so much, is it takes that jelly bean jar that you were just talking
Sure.
about and it makes it so big. It's like calculating the amount of jelly beans that would fit into the Empire State Building. And I don't think there's enough people in the world, even if you surveyed all 8 billion of us, that you would be able to average it into.
Plus, now there's so much automation in the stock market.
Right.
It's almost unpredictable. I mean, it's unpredictable for at least me.
I'm just losing
Yeah.
all my money in Bitcoin.
Exactly.
That's all I'm gonna. Every dime, I'm not gonna buy cheap hookers and booze anymore.
Just Bitcoin.
Just Bitcoin. Have a nice, expensive.
Yeah, I mean, there's a country. It just came out, I think, yesterday. There's a country secretly buying Bitcoin to exchange they're basing their like value, whatever the currency they're using, on Bitcoin. Like, so it's like backed by Bitcoin.
Backed by Bitcoin.
Yeah, so there's very.
You know
a
what
lot-
I do believe on Bitcoin
What?
though? A lot like McDonald's after it had been in business for several years, and there's a old
Too
saying-
big to fail.
no, not too big to fail. There was a guy that came back from the war, and he was going to invest in McDonald's after he
Okay.
got back from the war, and he got off the plane or whatever, got back from the war, and he sees the sign they had just made, over 1 million people served, and he didn't invest in McDonald's like he said he was, because he was like, I'm too late. It's already.
Oh, ouch.
So I believe, think of how old Bitcoin actually is.
It's not.
It's not.
It just came out yesterday.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think, even if it's going to fluctuate a lot. It's
Yeah.
a very volatile thing. But I think to a person, even my age, you can start investing in that now and see some real dividends in the future.
In 10 years, easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Anyways, I think with that, because I want to talk about so many other things. I want to, like, this whole human thing about IQ and how you could train yourself to get a higher IQ score. And you're telling me the flashcards and like recognizing patterns and this stuff. And anyways, we'll save that for another time.
okay.
I think I'm done.
For tonight.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.